things are going well at MID. We're well into the summer, and so diversion's been ongoing to get water to irrigators. It's kind of a relief to have enough water for everybody this year. After every year, the last 3 years, having reduced allocations. And this year we have, it's an uncapped allocation. It's a 42-inch allocation with extra water available if you want to buy extra water. One of the big things we did do is made water available to guys that were outside the district that border the canal system still, on the east side of the district for groundwater recharge, because on the east side of Stanislaus County we see a lot of reduced groundwater tables. And so we wanted to be able to provide water to guys who could get access to the canal, to growers out there, to get them off of groundwater for this year. And so that program is ongoing, and kind of wait and see, trying to get it going in the middle of the irrigation season. You kind of, you're not going to get as good a participation as you would hope for if you'd had it done before, but you never know what type of water you're going to have till late. So as soon as we knew what type of year we were going to have, we made sure to have some water that was available. Otherwise at MID, things are going really well. Financially, things are good. We're going to start our budget process at our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks on Tuesday, August 9th. For those of you who are interested in it, if you're curious where your money goes, the budget process is open to the public. The budget workshops follow our board meetings. If you can't attend the board meetings because they're in the morning, it's all available on the website. And so you can go on the website, watch live video. If you can watch it live, if you can't watch it live, you can go back and watch it recorded. And the budget process takes several months. We always start July, August timeframe and hope to get done in about October to approve the budget for next year in October. From what I've heard already from staff, the way things are going, specifically with natural gas prices, it's allowing the district a little more flexibility. And so at this point, I don't anticipate any sort of rate increases, which is fantastic. There's no utility in the valley who has had as long of a streak at the current rates, electric rates that we've had. Last rate increase we had at MID was in 2011. It took voted on in 2011, went in place in 2012. So we're looking at going several years and operating within our means. So we're turning the corner, because for a while there, you couldn't say that about fiscal operations at MID. So I think that's the big one. The other thing that I want to touch on real quick is for some of you that are used to seeing me here, we did a presentation here. Oh, it's been probably about 7-8 months ago on the Worth Your Fight campaign. You guys see the Worth Your Fight signs that are around. What's happening with that? March 17th was the deadline to submit comments to the State Water Resources Control Board. We had those hearings that were around. There was a big one in Modesto at the Center Plaza. We had over 1,000 people throughout the day that showed up to voice their concerns with the state's plan, which would essentially bankrupt our water supply and in turn do severe economic damage to our county. And the state is in the process of essentially reviewing, and they by law have to respond to every comment they receive. From what I've heard, they intend to release their response to comments sometime by October 1st, with the intention to vote to still implement their plan by the end of the year or first of next year, which is aggravating to say the least. We have been ongoing in settlement talks. We know the river, we have the better science, we know the solutions to improve habitat and aquatic species while not having the economic turmoil and loss of water that their plan would have. And so we do have that on our side. The science is on our side. And so the settlement talks have been ongoing. The governor brought in Secretary Bruce Babbitt, former U.S. Secretary of the Interior and former governor of Arizona, to sort of lead those settlement talks. I wish I could say they've been very fruitful to this point, but when you bring a lot of the environmental groups into the same room and everybody's on very far ends, it's hard to get people to make some progress. But I would anticipate in about 2 months, you're going to see a shift from Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts anyway, as far as the Tuolumne River is concerned, to become maybe a little more aggressive in our approach toward getting a proper solution. So stay tuned for that. As we get closer, I'll definitely give you guys more details on that toward pushing a proper solution versus what the state is pushing. So that's about maybe in the next 2 months, but as we get closer to that day, I'll be sure to keep you guys posted on what's going on there.
Okay, question.
Yep.
So in economic turmoil, what is MID going to do about the bass? Do you, because I read the article and I came and I did public comment to MID about, because TID and San Francisco are on the same page for the predation suppression. My husband's in the sports fishing industry. Bass, predation suppression of bass is going to cause us economic turmoil. Jake, so what is MID going to do about the bass?
I think the total state, I think you mentioned total state revenues for bass is about a little over $1 billion.
Don't give me the ag. Well, I don't care about the ag. I'm not
They're playing
the
just
ag.
for that revenue. $1.6 billion hit just to our county.
I like the ag. I like the almonds.
So here's the problem.
I don't want you suppressing the bass because the bass are a straw man for the salmon. They are being punished.
Well, the problem is in 2012 we did a study that was approved. It is a study of record for our license by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The study was designed and built by Department of Fish and Wildlife, Trout Unlimited. The fishing groups and organizations helped us design a predation study on the Tuolumne River to assess the impact of all predator species on juvenile salmon. And that study in 2012 showed 96% loss due to predation alone.
No, it is less than 2% for predation.
No,
out of 19 bass sampled, you had one bass that had salmon in its stomach contents.
96%
no, and
loss.
The population of bass has dropped since 1990.
It is, regardless of whether it's dropped, the amount of bass in the river system, and again, this is a study of record. They asked us to do in more detail.
What are you going to do?
So the big thing that we intend to do or hope to do on the river system is we would like to install what we refer to as a predation weir. We normally install counting weirs on the river system to count fish that migrate into the river system. Specifically, we use that. We install it generally in first part of September. It stays there until the end of December, early January for the purpose of counting up migrating salmon, so you know exactly how many adult salmon migrated into the river system for the purpose of spawning. What we intend or would hope to do, what we would like to do as part of this, because again, this is all subject to settlement and approval by everybody that's part of those talks. But what we would like to do is install what we would refer to as a predation weir, which is just below the spawning grounds. We can install one of these weirs, which has essentially a gate with a camera system, and we have a full-time biologist on staff on the river. We can monitor what fish are coming upstream. Upstream of that weir, we can relocate all of the predator fish that are located upstream in the spawning grounds.
Where are you going to relocate them to? Don Pedro?
Within the river system.
Why? Why in the river system? If they're predators to the salmon, why would you put them back in the river where the salmon are? Put them in Don Pedro.
They wouldn't be so they would be below the point where the weir is, so that essentially what you would have, because there's the two biggest stressors is number one, striped bass. Striped bass consume the vast majority of the salmon smolts. Number two, the other thing that you start seeing, which they don't really count it towards predation, but we count it, but when you factor in the predation study was really looking at the actual consumption of juvenile salmon. But in my opinion, as one, the second biggest stressor is what I refer to as the sucker fish, the bottom feeding fish.
Catfish? Are you talking about catfish?
No, the ones that you see, carp, and there's a couple different names that escape me, yellow something.
The only ones in your FERC report are the striped bass, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, and second pike minnow.
As I just said, that study was based on actual consumption. So let me explain this one, and you will see the difference. Those fish are the bottom mouth, sucker fish that suck off the bottom. And what happens during spawning is a lot of those fish will go and live in the spawning grounds. And when the female comes in, lays her eggs, the male comes in to seed those, and it creates a cloudiness in the water. That is an attractant to those sucker fish who then come in and suck up the eggs. So that is not counted in the predation study, and it doesn't count they wouldn't consider that predation, because predation really looks at the consumption of actual juvenile salmon.
Are you going to relocate the sucker fish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Where?
Or the sucker fish would most likely be on a take permit, because it wouldn't be a significant amount.
So that would be people to eat?
Well, it would be a take permit is a technical term that you get from Department of Fish and Wildlife for removal of a species. So when a take permit is basically a kill permit. So That's what it is. You're killing those fish in the river. They are non-native species that are a predatory species on the eggs. And so the idea is in this area where you have the spawning grounds, if you can get rid of anything that would, one, eat those juvenile salmon in that small section of the river, or two, consume their eggs, essentially what you have done is create a natural hatchery that is free from predation in the river system.
How are you going to kill them? Either electroshocking or
Yeah, you
poison?
can electrofish the river most likely. I don't know. Again, these are ideas that are being talked about that are yet to be developed out, right? So this is stuff that's being discussed that we see as being a very good compromise on the river system, because the number one stressor on juvenile salmon is predation. The state acknowledges that. The state acknowledges it, by the way. Their reason for wanting to put the flows down is their argument is more water, and this is on the record from a Department of Fish and Wildlife official during the hearings, is if there's more water in the river, there's more places for the baby salmon to swim away and hide from the bass. So they even acknowledge that the bass is the
No, the primary predator is humans, and the state has not had a ban on salmon fishing
I
since
agree with that.
2009.
I agree with that. I don't
Your
disagree with that at all.
irrigation district should not be the ones to implement that. The state needs to, because they're taking the water for the tunnels. They're not taking it for the salmon. The salmon are a strong
The
man.
problem is the state has a biological objective. In order for the whole purpose of this proposal from the state is based on a biological objective for the survival of salmon. Period.
But
I
that's
agree
a
with
straw
you.
man.
That is not. That is their actual.
No, it's for
it
the
is-
tilted tunnels,
that
because
is
they're
their
going to take
excuse,
water
right.
from the
That
Sacramento
is why
River,
they
so
want
they
that
want
much
our
water.
water to
That
offset
is-
it.
I
And they
agree
won't
completely.
talk about it because
Okay.
it's in a lawsuit.
Is this the right meeting, Catherine?
Let me say this
Sorry, I
real
have
quick.
questions too.
You're right. The amount of water they're asking for is a direct correlation to the necessity of the delta for the tunnels. However, their biological objective that they are using to access that water is because of salmon, period. But they acknowledge that the number one stressor is the predation. And in order to compensate, they want to put the more, that is their excuse. I agree. But regardless, they have a biological objective to see more salmon in the river system. So that is what we are trying to tackle, is show them that we can improve salmon numbers, which, by the way, this last year, we do, as I said, we count returning salmon. We had the second highest number of salmon in the river system since we've been counting. So it's still, and by the way, we're at the furthest southernmost and warmest waters of all the salmon waters. So when we're talking about these numbers, it's our second highest number of salmon on the river system was about
You're going to
3,800.
kill the carp. Where are you going to relocate the bass to?
Again, I don't know.
Put them in the lake.
Well, I don't, that is still, the idea is we get them out of there. Once we get people on board for that premise, then you can have the rest. It's so hard just to get people on board for even that idea that we'll hash that rest out when the time comes. The first thing is, here is a great idea that we can do that would be able to create it's a fantastic idea.
No, it's not.
It creates a natural nursery in the river system, free from predation. So when they hatch, you get a higher percentage of salmon smolts that actually hatch. Then you get a higher percentage that are able to grow to maturity because they're free from predation. And then when it comes time to send them down the river system, we send through what we call a pulse flow, or functional, we refer to them as functional flows. And during that time, we can put a lot of water down the river for a period of a couple of weeks to flush those little baby salmon out to the river system. That does help push them out into the delta and out to the ocean. And you'll get a higher percentage of them that'll make it because they're larger, they're stronger, and there's more because they grew up in essentially a nursery free from predators.